What up, ladies and gents?
What?
It is for sure SHIT. So happy
It's
Thursday, and we're ready to rock and roll another show. What if you had a strategy for retirement and it helped you today as far as tax returns? Well, we're going to be talking a lot about what's going on in your personal finances on today's show. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
The Business Bros Podcast was created for you. Learn from the business professionals who come to share their stories. Find out what's working in business and social media, what's hot and what's not, straight from the mouths of successful entrepreneurs out there doing the real work. And now, welcome to another episode of
Business Bros. Woo! And now it is time for James's fire intro.
Put me on the spot on this one. I had to come up with this one in 6.5 minutes, ladies and gents. But here we go. We're ready to go. It's another beautiful day outside in San Diego. Another fire episode of the Business Bros Pod. Before we jump into the show, a quick reminder to please subscribe on whichever platform it is that you're listening to us on. Give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, and drop a review and help other like-minded business owners find value from our guests as we rise in those podcast rankings. We will certainly appreciate every single one of you who does that. Our guest today has a history similar to my own, having spent 19 years in the insurance industry. She oversaw sales and service teams for a Fortune 100 company, my bad. Her career in the insurance space gave her the opportunity to network with real estate investors and professionals and learn all about their craft. She took what she learned and started investing for herself. Our guest is passionate about developing lasting relationships with clients and referral partners, making sure they have the best education and support so that they can make the best decisions in their investing journey, and it'll be simple and seamless. We're so excited to have on the show today someone who's won awards in every position that she's held, and she continues to win in everything she does. Joining us today from beautiful Orlando, Florida, the Director of Retail National Accounts at NewView Trust. Welcome to the show, Lisa Rodriguez.
All right, dude. Lisa, before you get started, James, 6.5 minutes in, dude.
I gave it a 10. A 10.
I give it a 10, dude. I give it a 10. Great job. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Out a little bit on that one.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time today, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right, James gave you a fire intro here in 6.5 minutes, and let's see if we can do him some justice for the next 30 minutes. Tell me, how'd you get into NewView, and what is NewView?
So how I got here was, as he said, I spent 19 years in the insurance industry, and the last 5, I owned my own agency. And during that time, I networked with a lot of real estate agents, real estate investors, lenders, and just heard a lot about the industry. Had a friend that worked at NewView, was telling me about it. I was considering selling my agency. I sold it. I took a little bit of time off, but then, thought I had to get back into the real world and wanted to learn more about NewView. So I joined the NewView family, and I've been learning and helping educate people just like all of us so that we can make better informed decisions with our retirement money.
All right, before we even get started, because you have so much information on the insurance space, I'm going to also extend an invitation, and I'm sure James will acknowledge, because we want to get people on James's show as well, the Insurance Bro Show, where we're talking about insurance. So getting a little bit of your experience being in that insurance space, what type of stuff did you learn over there that kind of transitioned over to NewView?
I think a lot about educating the client and also building the relationships, because that goes a long way. I guess in any industry, but so much so in the insurance industry. I mean, you're building referral partners with the agents, with the people that you meet, networking, going to the different groups. I was part of Women's Council of Realtors, and just soaking up the education and sharing that information, but also teaching as I go. Whenever I sold insurance, I taught as I went with the clients to explain the coverages, where not everybody does that. And then also on this side with NewView, just making sure that I try to answer as many questions as possible, because it is a different topic, even though it's been around since the 70s. Not everybody knows about it. And so a lot of times I'm talking to someone the first time they heard about self-direction.
Well, let's dive into some of these self-directed IRAs. So give me a little overview on what an IRA is in general, like a traditional IRA, maybe versus a Roth IRA, but we're going to be talking more on the traditional side here, I think, right? And then what's the difference? Why self-directed?
Okay. So yes, it's an individual retirement account, and the traditional is your pre-tax dollars, right? So your Roth is your post-tax dollars. So here's the thing. We are a custodian, just like Fidelity, Schwab, Ameritrade, except we allow our clients the opportunity to invest in alternative assets. So those custodians allow you to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And that's kind of, their space. But our space is the alternative side. So if you have retirement funds, or you worked and you have an old 401k laying around, you could essentially roll that over to us and start self-directing. So we're not offering you a different IRA. It's still a traditional or a Roth IRA. It's just what you can do with that IRA and what you can invest in. So we offer things like your ability to invest in real estate or notes, be a private lender, tax liens, tax deeds, cryptocurrency, precious metals. I mean, there's a whole gambit. It's more like what you can't invest in is more what people want to know. So,
but let's talk about the self-directed part. So being able to self-direct stuff in your IRA can be a little scary when it comes to some of the rules that are involved in an IRA. Why would somebody want to go self-directed, and what opportunities do we have there versus going the traditional route and just letting a broker kind of handle that sort of stuff?
So with the self-directed account, you have more ability, more responsibility, more ability, and you make your own decisions. So we're a non-fiduciary, meaning we're not going to give you investment advice. We're not going to get you financial advice. We're not CPAs. We're not attorneys. But at the end of the day, the clients that we have, they want to take a more hands-on approach. They want to get out of the volatility of the stock market and, off of Wall Street and come into Main Street, like literally Main Street, buying a house, doing what they know. You as a, real estate investor or realtor, you have a familiarity, and you know that if you bought this house in this neighborhood, you're going to get a good return. Whereas in the stock market, you're relying on someone else to do that for you in most cases. And there's really not a way to say, yep, I know, Apple's going to go up today. It's just not, it doesn't work that way. So it just gives you more control on your choices, because you may feel more comfortable with that, and it, and it's something that you've had, let's say, 20 years of experience in, and you do it already outside of your IRA. So why not add it to your retirement portfolio?
Yeah, and me personally, I'm not a huge fan of investing in the stock market because of what you said. I have no control. I don't know, there's nothing I can do to help Apple stock go up. There's nothing I can do to help Google stock go up or Amazon stock go up, right? I have no control over that. Or I could be a numbers junkie like James is, and then maybe trade options or something, right? And go on the volatility of the market. But that's a lot to learn. And most people who are have their day-to-day don't have time to go and say, you know what, I am going to learn about P&E ratios. I am going to go learn about IPOs and market fluctuation puts and options and whatever. I'm not going to learn all that. I just don't have time to learn all that stuff. So having a self-directed IRA allows you to do, like what you said, allows you to get out of that kind of investment and maybe open up the door to something you're more comfortable with. Real estate agents are very familiar with real estate, right? I mean, that totally makes sense. So the ability to take your self-directed IRA and say, you know what, I'm going to go out here and we're going to buy an apartment complex, because that business I do know how to operate in. What's a good benefit? Why is it great for somebody to have a self-directed IRA and buy an apartment complex versus just buying an apartment complex themselves?
So I would say it's the tax advantages. So for example, I'm just going to throw out an example. That way we can kind of look at the numbers, right? So if I had $1 and I invested that dollar year after year for 20 years, and I doubled my return every year. So $1 go to $2, $2 to $4, $4, $8, and so on until the 20th year. If I did that outside of a retirement account, I'd still be pretty good. I'd still come out with a $72,000 investment, right? So if you take those numbers and every year let's say we'll use 25% tax bracket, you take 25% away from that and keep doubling it, you're going to get to 72,000. But if I take that same dollar and I put it in the same investment with the same return, doubling it over 20 years times, how much do you think is in that account now?
After 20 years or
20
whatever?
years, doubling it in a retirement account.
Without getting hit in taxes? I have no idea. Hit me.
It's $1,042,000. So that's the difference. That's the reason why you can still continue to do it outside of your retirement account. But if you do it inside of a retirement account, then you're going to get to the million instead of 72,000. Now, at a Roth, you won't pay any taxes because that's your million. In the traditional, you might pay, let's say, 40% tax bracket at that point in time. So you're still going to walk away with 600,000 or 700,000 versus 72,000. So that is the actual advantage if you look at it on a numbers perspective.
Yeah, and just to clarify some stuff here, when we're talking about getting hit with the 40% tax bracket, that's assuming at the end you're taking it all out, because on a tax deferred account, you're not paying the taxes today, so you get the tax benefits today. So let's say, for example, ladies and gents, you made $100,000 and you put away 20,000 into a traditional IRA. That means essentially you're only going to pay taxes on 80,000 of your income versus the full $100,000. So this is a tax deferred account, but it's not considered tax free, because deferred means, just like in football, I'm not going to get the ball right now, I'm going to get it later. So you're not going to pay the tax today, you're going to pay the tax later, and that's when you take the money out. So when we're talking about the $1 million example here, we're assuming that in this example we pulled the money out and then you get hit with a 40% tax. Now, if you do it more traditionally, right, Lisa, where you get to the point, and this is where we're talking here about the accumulation phase when we're talking about retirement. So you're in your working years right now. Most of you who are listening are in your working years. So you're acquiring money and you're paying your bills, you're living your lifestyle, but you're putting money away towards that retirement. So when you do reach the point where you are going to pay taxes in the end on a traditional, you've put enough money away so that you're taking part of that out every single year to pay your living expense. And when you take it out, the amount that you take out is what we're going to be paying in taxes. Is that about right?
That is correct. Absolutely.
All right. So in a Roth, the Roth is a little bit different, right? So in a Roth, I pay the taxes today. So if I make $100,000, I get taxed on $100,000, right? But I already paid Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam already got his piece. And then what's left over, I'm going to put it in this account. Now, in this account, we have some restrictions on it. In a Roth IRA, you can't pull it out until you're 59 and a half. It has to sit in there for at least 5 years. But the plus side of that is when you hit that $1 million marker, when you're taking that money out, Uncle Sam doesn't get any more. He already got his piece. So that's always a great strategy. I always like the tax-free stuff at the end. Tell me a little bit about what's an SD IRA, a self-directed IRA. What's the process that someone needs to do to go ahead and get one started, to get one opened?
Okay. So I usually break it down into 3 steps. The first step would be opening the account. So you come, you talk to me or our team, you get an account application, you complete that, send in a copy of your ID with it. Takes us about 24 to 48 hours to open the account. The second part of that is getting the money over to us. So there's a couple of different ways. You can do it via contribution. If you don't have an IRA currently and you want to start, getting it going and starting the process, you can send us a check and we can go ahead and get that started. The contributions are $6,000 if you're under the age of 50, $7,000 if you're over the age of 50. The other way you can fund it is via transfer. So if you already have an IRA somewhere with Fidelity, Schwab, or whoever, and you want to just transfer those funds over, you have 100,000 there, you can go ahead and do that. Or the third option is a rollover. So if you have an old 401k or an old employer plan, TSP, you can go ahead and roll that over into an IRA as well. So those are the 3 ways to get it funded. And then the third part of it is once you identify an investment, you say, Lisa, I want to go ahead. I figured out I want to, be a note holder, or I want to purchase a piece of land. Then we have a purchase packet that you would complete along with sending us a copy of the contract in the name of the IRA or a copy of the note. And we would review that. And it takes us usually up to 2 business days to review that and get it funded. So it's a pretty smooth process. The part that takes just the longest would probably be getting the money over to us, because depending on where it's coming from and what their processes are.
And let's hover here for a second, because there's a lot of cool things that you just talked about. Things like rollovers. There are people who have recently, due to COVID, have jobs that are no longer there anymore, that they might have been there for years and they need to find another job, and they have done so already, or they're looking for something, and they have some of these old retirement accounts. And the funny thing is, you don't really think about it until you get that statement in the mail and you're at your new job and you're like, oh man, I still have money over there. How do I get it out? All right. And so they get in this little place where they're stuck. What's the process like for a rollover? So if I lost my job and I now have a new job and I just got my statement now what do I do?
So you would do the same thing as far as getting the application done. The rollover would be the second part. You would contact your prior employer and say, hey, I opened an account at NewView and I want to go ahead and get my funds rolled over to my account with NewView. And it's actually a process that the client initiates, because they don't like to talk to us. We're not the prior employer. You, as the prior employee, would contact them and initiate that process. And it's usually pretty smooth. I mean, they're going to send it over as soon as possible.
You also talked about once they're ready to make an investment, that they identified an investment, to contact your team to help do that. Can you explain why I need to use your team to help facilitate the purchase of an asset within the IRA?
We are your record keeper. So we basically just oversee that, there's a purchase being made, and we make sure that the documents say, it's in Lisa Rodriguez's IRA, not Lisa's personal name on the contract, just so that when, the deed is being, created, that it's created with the IRA's name on it. And also for funding, where do you want us to send the money? Because that's the self-direction. You're doing everything. So you're telling us, hey, this is what I want to invest in. This is where I want you to send my money on this day with this title company, and we're closing here. So that way we can get it funded for you properly.
Now here's what I want to get into, because there are rules that apply to self-directed IRAs. Certain things, like, for example, let's say you do buy that apartment complex, or you buy a fourplex or something like that, and you do use the application process, you do use the right fiduciary to process this thing, but then you go over, you collect the rent, and you put some money in your pocket, right? Or you decide, maybe my IRA doesn't have enough, let me just cut my own check and put some money in. When you start to commingle things, right? When you start to commingle your personal name along with your personal funds, when you take money out, why is that not allowed? What's going on there that's a big no-no?
It's a prohibited transaction to do those things. There's disqualified parties for an IRA, right? So yourself, your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, their spouses, your parents, your grandparents, their spouses, and any businesses owned by those individuals cannot transact business with your IRA. So I couldn't purchase a house with my IRA and then rent it to my kid, or I couldn't buy it from my parents through my IRA. Those are prohibited. And that's just because the IRS has those rules in place. They don't want anything to get sticky as far as, sweetheart under the table deals. There's, you're not paying the right taxes, or you're getting a break on taxes because of this. So they just want to make sure that everything's at arm's length. There's no sweat equity, and that you're not going to do anything that you would do differently for anybody else.
So, ladies and gents, it's like this. Look, recently that big story was in the paper about President of the United States only paying $750 in personal income tax. And we talked about this on the show, Lisa. We were talking about how the reason why that happens is because he plays by the rules. He has a team of people who are following these kinds of rules. This is one of those situations. If you have a traditional IRA, what we're saying is, if you follow the rules, if you use a company like NewView Trust to help you facilitate the purchase of these kinds of assets, to maintain those kinds of assets, then you're playing by the rules. You just deferred tax. It's growing within your account at a rate better than what you can do in other places, because you're self-directing, so you're in control and you're not breaking any rules. If you start taking money out of it, a little side thing on the side, or renting to a niece or nephew, or whatever that situation is, you are doing what's called tax evasion. That's what Al Capone was doing. tax avoidance is what Donald Trump is doing. And even though you don't like it, or we don't like it, it is completely legal. Tax avoidance is 100% legal if you have a team behind you. Lisa and NewView Trust are one of those, or some of those people who are that team that can be behind you to help do things in a way that's tax advantage, so you can legally avoid paying a lot of these taxes. Any comment on that, Lisa?
No, I mean, like I said earlier, we're not a fiduciary, so we're not going to give you advice. So we're going to tell you the rules, and we're going to, make sure that what we see is we think everything's going by the rules. If you send us a contract and the last name is the same, we're going to say, hey, are you familiar with those disqualified parties? I mean, we're not going to know if the names are different, right? I mean, but there are things that are blatant that if we see it, we will let you know. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Corona hit, and anytime we have massive pandemics or massive, the last time we had Congress get involved so much was in 2007 when we had the major recession come through. Just like we did, now in 2020, we had major closures of businesses, which means we had a lot of funding go out. We had PPP loans, we had an extension of unemployment, and all this came as a care package known as the CARES Act, right? Can you tell me a little bit about how that affected the IRAs and 401ks and 403bs area?
So we actually, we have some information on our blog. If you go to newviewtrust.com/blog and you search CARES Act, you'll see there's, some webinars and some information there. But just to kind of give you some perspective, we kind of call it like the CARES Act loophole, right? So you can take up to $100,000 out of your current 401k plans, which this is the first time like in 40 plus years that you're able to do that. Most employer plans do not allow for it, but you can, if you were medically or financially affected by COVID, you can take up to $100,000 from your existing 401k plan. And, you have 3 years if you want to pay, to pay it back. And if you wanted to take it out and put it into a self-directed account immediately, then, obviously talk to your CPAs about it. But, there wouldn't be any really tax, you're not having to pay taxes on that money if you put it into the account immediately. But there's a 3-year rule, and obviously do your research on that. Again, talk to your CPA. But the loophole allows for people to take it out of their existing 401k plans and roll it into a self-directed account.
And that's a pretty cool option. So here's just to clarify some of this stuff. So what we're saying, when you take the money out of your 401k, it's not considered a distribution. You're taking it out as either a loan, or you have the option to roll it over. And those are two things that are not, they have zero tax consequence. So it's kind of like when you buy a house, right? If you buy a house for $100,000, after a few years, it's now valued at $300,000. You sell it, you make $200,000 in profit. Well, the IRS and the word profit, they go synonymous with each other. So when you earn income, whether it's in capital gains or as earned income, you are going to pay Uncle Sam his share of what you made. And so what we're talking about here, when you're taking money out of your 401k, when you're borrowing it from yourself, it is not a sale. You are not cashing out. You are not liquidating that asset. You are actually taking the money as a loan, thanks to the CARES Act, without any penalties, and you're just putting it in another self-directed IRA. So you're taking it from one tax deferred account and you're putting it into another tax deferred account.
So the way that I understand it is it would be taken as like a distribution and then, like an indirect rollover, but I'm not.
Oh, it could be. Okay.
So.
Well, if it is considered a distribution, then what's going to happen is you're going to get a 1099 with a box code that'll give you the ability to roll it over in a tax-free advantage way. So it just depends on however you're taking it out. So again, talk to your tax preparer, talk to your CPA, because here's the thing about taxes. And Lisa, I mean, you've been in the financial industry for a long time, and I tell people all the time, the answer to every single financial question is it depends, because your situation will always vary. And so, income comes in many different ways. And so taking a distribution for one person might be a perfectly legitimate, easy transaction, where another person, it might totally affect their tax brackets and mess them up. So talk to your CPA about that specific strategy for you. But Lisa, if people wanted to get a hold of you so that they can get the process started, how do they get in contact with you?
They can call me at 407-412-7177 or lrodriguez@newviewira.com is my email address. And that's lrodriguez@newviewira.com. But yeah, going to NewView Trust, we have so much information. We have, we host all the podcasts that we've been on, the webinars that we give. And that's one thing that I think separates us from a lot of other SDIRA companies is we provide free education. We really want to make sure that our clients have the information that they need to, take this on and do it and feel comfortable doing it. I mean, we have classes every week. Once a month, it's NewView education. The other 3 is guests that come on the show and talk about their area of expertise. And it's just to give clients educational resources. It's not to push any agendas. It's just so that you feel comfortable, because if you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to do it. And we want you to do it. We want you to feel comfortable doing it. A lot of you have already been doing it outside. Why not take advantage of, the tax deferral?
No peer pressure, ladies and gents, but everybody's doing it. That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. All right, Lisa, I left a few minutes here at the end because I kind of wanted to ask you questions about your ex-insurance agency and kind of tease you a little bit into moving over to the Insurance Bro Show here really soon. So James and I have been talking about doing a show that discusses the purchasing or the sale of an insurance agency. So really quick, can you tell me what your experience was like? I guess, the 2-minute version of what your experience was like selling your agency?
Well, I actually had an agency through a franchise, so it was probably not as difficult as it would have been outside of a franchise because I offered it to franchisees first. And I did have a lot of interest and we had lots of discussions and, we did a lot of negotiating and going back and forth. And so that was probably less of a battle for me to sell my agency than if I was outside of a franchise. If somebody wasn't interested inside of the franchise, then an outside person could have purchased it, but they also would have had to pay the franchise fee to the franchisor. So just a little bit different, I think, than most independent agencies, and is that we had the franchise. It was still
independent agency though, right? Even though it was franchised.
It did. Yes, it was. We had all about 50 different carriers, and so it was definitely independent.
So when what prompted the sale? So why leave an established business?
I just kept thinking, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I knew that the longer that I stayed, the look back would not be there anymore in the future because, as you grow, the renewals are coming in, you have this book of business. And I knew that if I stayed longer, I would just never leave. And I wasn't passionate about it. So at that point, I just decided it was time to say goodbye and see what else is out there.
All right, last question. What advice would you give somebody who's considering buying or selling an agency?
I would say not to give up because, that first year you're like, oh my God. I remember sitting there and saying, my phone, I need to get my phone to ring. I need to get out. I need to build relationships and trying to motivate myself to do that and get up every day and know, okay, today I'm going to have this many people that I'm going to chase and just building the business. And so I would say just keep at it. I mean, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. It's what I knew. I was good at it. And, I would just say stick with it in the beginning. Don't get discouraged and keep moving forward.
I surrender to your will.
All right, that's what it's gonna be like when you get in the insurance space. But ladies and gents, just a little plug. Check out James's show. It's the Insurance Bro Show. You can find him at the Insurance Bro Show. We're on every day at 2:30. I say we, but I become the producer on that show for the most part. So but it's still
you help
fun.
me out a lot. I
help you out a little bit. But check it out if you're in the insurance space. That's the show you want to go to if you want to be on that show. It's www.insurancebroShow.com/guest. Trust. And Lisa, we are going to have you on that show so you can come tell us about your experience growing your business and then eventually selling it. Because let's face it,
That's
man,
awesome.
a lot of people get into the business to eventually sell and retire. Now you went and you're like, nah, I got more to do with my life, but it's still the experience of building something and then selling it off is super valuable. So I commend you for that. And ladies and gents, last little thing, NewView Trust, self-directed IRAs. You guys got money put away. You need to put it to work for you. You wish you had access to it. You wish you could buy some sort of property because those opportunities are there right now. Make sure you guys hit up Lisa, NewView Trust, at NewView Trust on Instagram. And Lisa, real quick again, what was your phone number? What was your email?
407-412-7177. Email is lrodriguez@newviewira.com.
And you're allowed to work across state lines?
Yes. All over the United States. Yes.
Thank God for the internet, ladies and gents. That's what it's all about. Lisa, thank you very much for being on the program. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
All right, ladies and gents, that's all we got for you guys today. Enjoy the rest of your SHIT. So happy it's Thursday. Peace.
Bye.
And I'm out.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Business Bros Podcast. Are you looking to get more clients or to increase your income? Hernan, the business bro, can help you generate referrals through the power of podcasting. And James, the insurance bro with Pipeline Insurance, can help you effectively add insurance to your existing business. If you are ready to create wealth today and generational wealth for tomorrow, email businessbros@csfirst.com to schedule a free consultation or join the Business Bros Network, www.businessbros.biz.